The shimmering twin moons of Siriel cast a soft, alien glow over the capital city of Vorlis, an architectural marvel built from iridescent minerals that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing hues. Commissioner Elias Monroe, Earth's ambassador to the Xylarian Empire, felt the weight of his role more heavily than ever as he and his wife, Marisol, arrived at the massive hall where the day's negotiations would take place. The Xylarians, a race known for their advanced technology and rigid customs, had long been both a strategic partner and an occasional adversary of humanity. Standing over 7 feet tall, with skin that gleamed like metal and eyes that emitted an ethereal glow, they had a presence that was equal parts intimidating and awe-inspiring. Today, Elias was expected to discuss security policies, border treaties, and, most importantly, a potential alliance to curb rogue pirate factions threatening the outer edges of Xylarian and Earth territories. As Elias entered the council hall, he glanced at Marisol and gave her a reassuring nod. She had her own reasons for attending the trip, including her passion for learning about alien cultures and an unshakable sense of duty to support her husband. While Elias was locked in tense discussions, she planned to visit the Cyrelian marketplace, a bustling hub known for its treasures, crafts, and rare alien artifacts. The marketplace was unlike anything Marisol had ever seen, filled with stalls draped in holographic silks, sellers with voices that changed pitch to match the rhythms of Cyrelian songs, and strange creatures scuttling between vendors. Drawn to a stall displaying crystalline artifacts that glowed softly in the twilight, she picked up a small pendant made from a stone that seemed to ripple with liquid light. "What is it?" she asked the vendor, a short, three-eyed alien who responded with a hum she assumed was a form of laughter. "Ah, human, yes. That stone reacts to life energy. It shines brighter when near sentient beings." Fascinated, Marisol was just about to ask the price when she heard a commanding, mechanical voice behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with a group of Xylarian soldiers, their imposing silver armor glinting under the alien sky. Their leader, a towering figure whose helmet bore the insignia of the Emperor's Guard, spoke in an accented version of Standard Galactic, Earth's official language in interstellar diplomacy. "Human female. You are required for immediate inspection." Marisol took a step back, confused and wary. "Inspection? For what reason?" "Suspicious activity detected," the soldier replied coldly, his glowing eyes narrowing. Before she could argue, he gestured for 2 other soldiers to flank her, effectively cutting off any chance of escape. They moved with mechanical precision, as though this was a routine task rather than an extraordinary overreach of authority. Marisol's mind raced. She knew the Xylarians had strict security protocols, especially around their valuable market artifacts, but she hadn't done anything wrong. She tried to keep her voice calm and steady. "This is unnecessary. I'm here as a guest of the Xylarian Council. My husband, Commissioner Monroe, is currently your status is irrelevant," the soldier interrupted. "Follow protocol. Comply with the inspection." One of the soldiers pulled out a small handheld device, its surface covered in a web of faintly glowing blue lines. Marisol shivered as he began scanning her with the device, which emitted a cold hum. The scan was invasive, with the device hovering too close, lingering over her body in a way that made her deeply uncomfortable. She clenched her fists, resisting the urge to pull away. To make matters worse, she caught the disdain in the soldier's expressions. She was human, an outsider in their eyes, and they clearly relished their unchecked authority over her. As the scan reached her shoulder, the soldier pressed a small button on the device. She felt a sudden, sharp tingling sensation as though a small charge had been injected just beneath her skin. Alarmed, she pulled back. "What was that?" she demanded, her voice laced with anger. The soldier's response was a dismissive grunt. "A standard scan. Nothing more." "Standard," she repeated, feeling the area on her shoulder where the device had touched her. It felt faintly warm, almost as if something foreign now lay beneath her skin. She opened her mouth to protest further, but the soldiers had already turned away, their inspection apparently complete. Shaken, Marisol hurried back to the council hall to find her husband. She pushed her way past the tall doors and made her way to the central negotiation room, where Elias was wrapping up his first round of talks with the Xylarian Council. His face was tense, his posture formal, but when he saw her enter, he immediately noticed her distress and crossed the room to meet her. "Marisol? What happened?" She quickly relayed the incident, describing the soldiers' aggressive behavior and the strange device they had used on her. As she spoke, Elias's face darkened, his jaw clenching in controlled anger. The Xylarians' lack of respect for human diplomats and their families was one thing, but this blatant mistreatment crossed the line. "They searched you without cause? And this device, did you feel anything unusual?" "Yes," she replied, rubbing her shoulder unconsciously. There was a tingling sensation. It felt unnatural. Elias put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "This isn't just disrespect. It's a breach of diplomatic protocol. I need to speak with the Xylarian Council immediately." Without waiting for permission, Elias stormed back into the council chamber, demanding to speak to the council head, High Chancellor Vorkal. The Xylarians in the chamber shifted uncomfortably as he launched into a heated explanation of the incident, each word underscoring his outrage. "This action is unacceptable," Elias declared, his voice ringing out with authority. "You invited us here as allies, as diplomats, and yet you treat my wife, my family with such disdain. This was not a security measure. This was an insult. And if it goes unaddressed, it will be an affront to all of humanity." Chancellor Vorkal, a Xylarian with a silvery sheen to his skin and an almost statue-like expression, regarded Elias impassively. After a long pause, he finally responded, his voice as cool as stone. "We regret any discomfort the incident may have caused. However, we stand by our protocols. In light of recent intelligence reports, increased security measures are necessary." "Necessary?" Elias repeated, incredulous. "What intelligence report justifies harassing my wife in the middle of a peaceful marketplace?" Vorkal's expression didn't waver. "We've received indications of unauthorized foreign interference in our territory. If your wife was searched, it was strictly due to these protocols. Any personal offense is collateral." Elias stared at Vorkal, realizing this was no oversight. The Xylarians had done this deliberately. Whether it was an attempt to test Earth's limits, or to send a message about their dominance, one thing was clear: they saw humans as inferior, and were willing to remind Elias of it. Seething, Elias returned to Marisol, who was waiting anxiously in the corridor. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his mind already racing with his next move. The Xylarians may have dismissed his concerns, but he would not let the incident pass unanswered. He was determined to uphold the respect and dignity Earth deserved, even if it meant challenging the entire Xylarian Empire. But as they walked back to their quarters, a chilling realization set in: the device they'd used on Marisol might have been more than a mere scanner. And if it was, their visit to Serial had taken on a new, dangerous meaning. As the warm glow of Serial's twin moons waned, Elias and Marisol returned to their quarters, a set of sleek, high-security chambers provided by the Xylarian Council. Yet, despite the luxurious accommodations, neither could sleep. The strange events of the day lingered in their minds like an itch they couldn't scratch. Elias paced the room, his mind racing with possibilities. He was certain now that the search of Marisol had not been an innocent measure; it was a calculated power play, or worse, an attempt to gather intelligence. Marisol sat by the window, her eyes distant as she massaged the spot on her shoulder where the Xylarians had pressed the scanning device. "It's so odd," she murmured, breaking the silence. "I can still feel something. Like there's a foreign object just beneath my skin." Elias stopped pacing, a flash of concern crossing his face. "Let me call Hannah," he said, pulling out his personal communicator. "She'll know what to do." Dr. Hannah Kim was Elias's closest confidant back on Earth, a brilliant scientist and one of the foremost experts in xenobiology and alien technology. It was the middle of the night on Earth, but when Hannah picked up the call, her face was bright and alert. Elias, Marisol, she greeted them, her expression immediately shifting to one of concern. "I got your message." "What happened?" Elias recounted the events in the marketplace, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Hannah listened intently, and when he mentioned the sensation in Marisol's shoulder, she nodded, already running through possible scenarios. "Marisol," Hannah said gently, "I want you to do a scan of your shoulder. Use the medical scanner in your quarters if the Xylarian Council provided one, but make sure you don't send the results through any system they might be monitoring." Marisol nodded and activated the scanner, holding it over her shoulder as it emitted a low hum. After a few seconds, the device displayed a faint but unmistakable signal. Marisol's eyes widened as she showed the screen to Elias. The scanner had picked up a small, round object embedded just beneath her skin, a microscopic tracker. Hannah's voice turned grave over the communicator. "This isn't just a search, Elias. They've tagged Marisol. They'll be able to monitor her every move, possibly even eavesdrop on us." A sick feeling settled in Elias's stomach. "Why would they go this far?" he muttered. "They know who we are. They know this violates every diplomatic protocol in the book." Hannah paused, and her expression grew serious. "Elias, you said something about an intelligence report. Did they give you any details?" "No," he replied, shaking his head. "They were vague, evasive. But there was something in their tone. Like they knew something we didn't." Hannah leaned closer to the screen. "I have a theory, but I hope I'm wrong. Have you heard any rumors about a new weapon the Xylarians are developing? There's been chatter across the galactic intelligence networks about something big, a weapon called the Singularity Protocol." Elias's face went pale. "The Singularity Protocol. I've heard whispers. Something powerful, capable of disrupting planetary defenses. But I thought it was just a rumor." Hannah's face hardened. If the Xylarians are actually developing it, they might believe Earth knows more than we're letting on. They're paranoid, Elias, and they're using Marisol to keep tabs on you." Marisol's hand instinctively went to her shoulder. "So they think we're spies?" "Or they want to make sure you're not," Hannah replied. "But Elias, this means the Xylarians are more desperate than they're letting on. If they've really developed a weapon like this, they're worried it could provoke retaliation from Earth or other galactic powers. This tracker isn't just for surveillance. It's a threat, a warning not to get too close." Elias clenched his fists. The idea that they would use his wife as a pawn, violating her privacy and safety for their own ends, sent a surge of anger through him. But Hannah's words brought him back to focus. They couldn't afford to act impulsively. Confronting the Xylarian Council directly might only escalate the situation. "So what do we do?" Marisol asked, her voice calm but tinged with anger. Hannah's voice was firm. "We play along, but we gather our own intelligence. This tracker can work both ways. If we can hack into its frequency, we might be able to get access to their systems, learn more about the Singularity Protocol and what they're planning." Elias nodded. "Can you send me the tools we need to do that?" "I'll send you the decryption module now, but be careful. The moment you attempt to access their network, they'll know someone's tampering with the signal. You'll need to find a way to stay under their radar." As they ended the call, Elias felt a mixture of fear and resolve. He looked at Marisol, who was watching him with a determined expression. "We're in this together, Elias. We can't back down now." The next day, Elias attended the council's scheduled meetings as though nothing were amiss. But his mind raced with plans. That evening, as soon as they returned to their quarters, he activated Hannah's decryption module and began the process of accessing the signal emitted by the tracker in Marisol's shoulder. The signal was strong, linking to a high-security server within the Xylarian network. The encryption was complex, with layers of code designed to detect any unauthorized tampering. Elias worked carefully, peeling back each layer with precision, his nerves on edge. One wrong move could alert the Xylarian authorities and endanger both him and Marisol. As he navigated through the security protocols, he caught glimpses of data streams, encrypted files, messages, logs, all leading back to a single directive titled Project Singularity. He opened a secure channel to Hannah, who was monitoring from Earth. "Hannah, I'm in," he whispered, his eyes scanning the data on the screen. "I'm seeing files on something called Project Singularity. But there's a restricted folder here, heavily encrypted. It's the only one with a security clearance I can't bypass." "Keep going," Hannah urged, her voice tense. "Anything you can find on Project Singularity could give us leverage." Elias worked quickly, his fingers flying over the controls. Finally, he managed to access a fragment of one of the files. It contained technical diagrams, formulas, and, most disturbingly, a reference to an activation phase set to take place within the month. He forwarded the data to Hannah before a firewall abruptly cut off his access, locking him out of the system. The screen went dark, and Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He'd seen enough to confirm their worst fears. The Xylarian Empire was indeed working on a weapon powerful enough to threaten entire planetary systems. And with the activation phase approaching, Earth's timeline for preparing a defense was shrinking by the hour. As Elias shared his findings with Marisol, a sense of urgency settled over them. They knew the Xylarians wouldn't stop at surveillance. Their actions today were a prelude to something far more dangerous. "We need allies," Marisol said quietly. "The Xylarian dissidents, those who don't support the Empire's aggressive policies. If we can reach out to them, maybe they'll help us. They'll have access to information we could never obtain on our own." Elias nodded, his expression grim. He had contacts within Serial's underground network, a loose alliance of Xylarians who opposed the Council's militant stance. But reaching out to them carried enormous risks. The Xylarian Empire punished dissent with ruthless efficiency, and any sign of disloyalty could mean a death sentence for their contacts. Still, Elias knew they had no choice. The Xylarians' plans for the Singularity Protocol were moving fast, and the Council had made it clear they were willing to use any means necessary to keep Earth under their thumb. The tracker in Marisol's shoulder was a constant reminder that they were both walking targets, their every move monitored and judged. Late that night, Elias sent a coded message to Tkal, a Xylarian dissident who had once served as a council member before defecting from the Empire. Tkal knew the depths of the Council's ambitions better than anyone and had first-hand knowledge of their military projects. If anyone could help them, it was him. As the message went out into the vast network of Serial, Elias and Marisol prepared for the dangerous path that lay ahead. They would have to trust in allies they barely knew, uncover secrets buried beneath layers of security, and face the brutal reality of the Xylarian Empire's ambitions. The tracker had marked them as enemies of the state, but it had also opened a chance to stop the Xylarians from unleashing a weapon that could devastate Earth. Their mission was no longer about diplomacy or protocol. It was about survival. The streets of Vorlis were eerily quiet as Elias and Marisol made their way through the shadowed alleys of the Xylarian capital. Clad in plain cloaks borrowed from Tkal's network, they moved carefully, avoiding the sweeping beams of the Xylarian patrol drones that hovered above. They couldn't risk being recognized, not with the tracker embedded in Marisol's shoulder. Despite Hannah's efforts, they hadn't yet managed to disable it without raising alarms. Instead, they had devised a plan to use it as a decoy, creating distractions to draw Xylarian forces away from the heart of their mission. Their destination was an abandoned transit station deep in the lower levels of Vorlis. Tkal, the former Xylarian council member turned dissident, had arranged to meet them there, bringing information on the elusive Singularity Protocol and, hopefully, a way to disable Marisol's tracker. As they descended into the depths of the city, the sterile beauty of the upper levels gave way to rusted metal, flickering lights, and graffiti in an alien script that pulsed faintly in the dim light. The hum of machinery echoed off the walls, a reminder of the Empire's relentless industry. Finally, they arrived at the station, an open chamber with remnants of broken transit pods scattered across the floor. A shadow detached itself from the wall and stepped forward. It was tall. His imposing Xylarian frame looked even taller and leaner in the dim lighting, his silver skin dulled to a muted gray to blend into the darkness. His sharp, glowing eyes assessed them with an intensity that held both wariness and respect. "You made it," Tal said in a voice that was deep and measured. "I wasn't sure you would be willing to come this far." Elias met his gaze. "We don't have a choice. The Council has crossed every line of diplomacy. They're developing a weapon that could destabilize the entire galaxy." Tal's face was unreadable as he listened, but a glimmer of something, perhaps anger or guilt, flashed across his expression. "The Singularity Protocol." "Yes, I know of it," he said quietly. "The Council believes it to be the pinnacle of Xylarian technological supremacy. They see it as the key to controlling the galaxy." Marisol stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. "We need your help to find and disable it. And if we're caught, Earth may not have time to prepare for what's coming." Tal nodded, gesturing for them to follow him deeper into the tunnels. "There's a place we can talk freely," he said, leading them down a twisting path until they reached a hidden door concealed behind a panel of rusted metal. Inside was a small chamber outfitted with old surveillance equipment, maps, and blueprints. The air was thick with the weight of old plans, whispered resistance, and hope that had long since grown cautious. Tal activated a map of the Xylarian territory on a screen, zooming in on an area deep within the planet's oceanic trenches. A glowing red dot marked a facility nestled far beneath the waves. "This is the research base," he explained, pointing at the screen. "It's nearly impenetrable, buried thousands of meters below the ocean's surface, surrounded by automated security drones and pulse mines. Only the Council and a select few scientists have access." Marisol studied the map, her brow furrowed. "Is there any way to bypass the security? Some way in that they wouldn't expect?" Tal's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "The Council designed the base to be secure against external threats. But there's a maintenance hatch on the eastern side of the facility. It's not part of their main security grid, only used by the technical staff for emergency repairs. We could use it to gain entry, but it's still guarded. If we're detected, the entire facility will go on lockdown." Elias nodded, absorbing the information. "Then we'll need to create a diversion. Something that will draw the guards and security drones away from the hatch." Tal tapped a spot on the map where a nearby facility housed hundreds of Xylarian patrol drones. "There's a control hub here. If we can overload it, the entire drone network will go down temporarily. It would give us a small window to enter undetected." As they finalized the plan, Tal glanced at Marisol's shoulder, where the tracker was still embedded. "That tracker is a liability," he said, his voice firm. "The Council is using it to monitor your location. If they see you anywhere near the research base, the mission will be over before it begins." Elias looked at Tal, worry etched across his face. "We haven't been able to disable it without triggering an alert. Can you help?" Tal studied the tracker, his eyes narrowing as he examined the alien tech embedded beneath Marisol's skin. "I can deactivate it temporarily, masking her signal. But it won't last long. The Council will notice eventually. We'll have to move quickly once it's down." Marisol nodded, her face resolute. "Do it." "I'm ready." Tal retrieved a small device from his bag, a sleek, silver tool resembling a cross between a syringe and a scalpel. He pressed it against her shoulder, and Marisol felt a sharp, brief pain as the device emitted a low hum. A faint glow pulsed beneath her skin, then faded. "It's masked," Tal said, nodding at Marisol. You're invisible to them. For now. With the tracker disabled, they set off toward the drone control hub. The night was still and heavy, the quiet broken only by the sound of their footsteps as they made their way through the city's underground passages. Elias felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him, the knowledge that their every move was fraught with risk. They were racing against time, against an empire, against the ticking countdown of the Singularity Protocol's activation. Finally, they reached the control hub, a small, nondescript building guarded by a single Xylarian officer. Tkal took the lead, slipping through the shadows and dispatching the guard with silent efficiency. Inside, the control room was a network of screens, all displaying data streams for the patrol drones scattered across Serial's surface. Working quickly, Tkal accessed the mainframe, inputting a series of commands that caused the screens to flicker and distort. The hum of the drones outside fell silent, replaced by the low buzz of an automated alert. They now had a short window before the Xylarian network restored itself. "Let's go," Tkal whispered, leading them out of the hub and toward the oceanic facility. The path to the research base was treacherous. They navigated narrow, winding passageways, avoiding the few security patrols still active, and finally reached the edge of the ocean. A vast expanse of water stretched before them, dark and foreboding, the research facility hidden deep beneath its surface. Marisol swallowed, the weight of their mission settling over her as she donned the breathing apparatus Tkal provided. "Once we're down there, what do we need to do to disable the Singularity Protocol?" Tkal adjusted his own breathing mask, his expression grim. "The protocol is controlled by a central generator. If we overload it, the feedback will cause a cascading failures throughout the system. But the generator is heavily shielded. We'll need to access the control room and input the override codes manually." Elias took a deep breath, his voice steady despite the tension. "Then let's do this." They entered the water, the cold biting through their suits as they descended into the depths. The darkness was oppressive, closing in around them as they swam deeper, guided only by the faint glow of Tkal's navigation beacon. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of their own breathing, a reminder of their isolation and vulnerability in the hostile environment. Finally, the base came into view, its metallic structure glinting faintly in the dark waters. The maintenance hatch loomed ahead, a small, unassuming door that offered a slim chance of entry. They approached cautiously, watching for any sign of movement from the drones or security guards. Elias placed his hand on the hatch, glancing back at Marisol and Tkal. "Ready?" They nodded, and he activated the access panel. The door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in dim red light. They slipped inside, their footsteps silent as they moved through the deserted hallways toward the control room. As they neared the core of the base, the sound of machinery grew louder, a deep, pulsing thrum that reverberated through the walls. They passed rows of server units and intricate machinery, all humming with the power of the Singularity Protocol. It was here, in the heart of the facility, that the Xylarians had built their Weapon A device capable of disrupting planetary defenses, rendering entire systems vulnerable to attack. They finally reached the control room, a circular chamber filled with consoles and screens displaying data in an alien script. At the center of the room stood the generator, a massive structure emitting a soft, ominous glow. Tkal moved to the main console, inputting the override codes with swift, practiced motions. But as he worked, the lights in the room flickered, and an alarm blared, echoing through the facility. "They've detected us," Tkal said urgently. "We need to finish this quickly." Elias and Marisol took up defensive positions, watching the entrance as Tkal completed the sequence. The generator's glow grew brighter, pulsing with an intensity that bordered on blinding. "Done!" Tkal shouted, and with a final command, he triggered the overload sequence. The generator emitted a high-pitched whine, the lights flickering wildly as the system began to implode. The facility shuddered, the walls trembling as the overload cascaded through the network, disabling the Singularity Protocol and rendering the weapon useless. "Time to go." Elias shouted, grabbing Marisol's hand as they fled the control room, Tal close behind. Alarms blared, and they raced through the facility, their path illuminated by the flickering lights as the base crumbled around them. They reached the maintenance hatch just as the facility began to collapse, diving back into the water and swimming furiously toward the surface. Behind them, the base disintegrated, swallowed by the dark depths of the ocean as the Singularity Protocol was destroyed. As they emerged, gasping for air, Elias looked at Marisol and Tal, a sense of relief flooding over him. They had done it. They had stopped the weapon and struck a blow against the Xylarian Empire. But as they made their way back to their quarters, they knew their victory was far from secure. The Xylarians would retaliate, and Earth's fragile peace had been shattered. The real battle was only beginning, and they would need every ally they could find to protect their world from the power of the Xylarian Empire. The descent back to Vorlis was tense and silent. The shadow of their recent actions loomed heavily over Elias, Marisol, and Tal. Destroying the Singularity Protocol was a massive blow to the Xylarian Empire, but the fallout was just beginning. They knew that news of the base's destruction would spread quickly, and with it, the Xylarian Council's wrath would fall heavily on Earth. As they slipped into the city through hidden passageways, Tal stopped suddenly, his glowing eyes filled with caution. "We're exposed here," he whispered. "The Council will have scrambled to identify anyone involved in the base's destruction. We must keep moving." They ducked into an abandoned complex deep within Vorlis's underbelly, a hidden network of rooms used by Tal's resistance network. The place was a jumble of makeshift equipment, maps, and communication devices that pulsed with encrypted transmissions. Marisol touched her shoulder instinctively, the now dormant tracker a reminder of their vulnerability. Although they'd masked her signal temporarily, it was only a matter of time before the Xylarians realized what had happened. Tal moved swiftly to a console in the corner, activating a holoprojector that displayed a live feed of Xylarian news reports. The coverage was stark, footage of military ships launching from serial spaceports, soldiers in formation, and the grim face of High Chancellor Vorkal addressing the people. "An unprecedented attack on Xylarian sovereignty," Vorkal was saying, his voice calm but laced with steel. "These acts of aggression threaten not only our empire, but the stability of our entire galaxy. We will find those responsible, and they will face the full measure of Xylarian justice." Elias gritted his teeth as the Chancellor continued, each word casting Earth as the villain. It was clear that the Xylarians would use this as a pretext for war. With the Singularity Protocol compromised, they would double down on their efforts to control Earth, even if it meant open conflict. Tal turned to Elias and Marisol, his expression unreadable. "You know that returning to Earth now will not end this," he said gravely. "The Council has declared you enemies of the Empire. They won't stop until Earth submits or retaliates." "We expected that," Elias replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "But there's still a chance to prevent war. If we expose the truth about the Singularity Protocol, we can turn the galactic community against the Xylarian Empire. They can't risk the scrutiny of every system, not with allies who would condemn their actions." Tal considered this, nodding slowly. "There's a way. But it will be dangerous." "Of course," Marisol said, her voice resolute. "We're ready for whatever it takes." Tal led them to a hidden corridor, one lined with surveillance feeds and communication equipment. He pointed to a glowing data conduit in the center of the room. "This conduit connects directly to the Council's mainframe. I designed it when I was still in the Council, a failsafe in case their ambitions ever went too far. From here, you can broadcast the data about the Singularity Protocol across the galactic network. But once you do, they'll know exactly where you are. They'll be coming for you." Elias glanced at Marisol, who nodded. Together, they moved toward the console. Tal initiated the connection, and as data flooded the screen, Elias began to prepare a transmission containing everything they gathered, the plans for the Singularity Protocol, the surveillance tactics, the hidden weapons facilities, and proof of the Council's plans to destabilize Earth. Marisol's fingers flew over the keys as she encrypted the data, then crafted a statement to accompany it. To the leaders of the galactic community, she typed, "We present undeniable proof that the Xylarian Empire has developed and deployed an advanced weapon designed to disrupt planetary defenses, intending to subjugate Earth and impose control across the galaxy." As the final pieces of data were encoded, T'Kal's eyes widened. "They're already onto us," he warned, glancing at a nearby screen. "Xylarian forces are closing in. We have minutes at best." Marisol hit the transmission button, and a deep hum filled the room as the message went live, spreading across the galactic network, where it would be seen by millions of leaders, citizens, and potential allies alike. The truth about the Xylarian Empire was now public knowledge. But they weren't safe yet. Outside, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The Xylarian soldiers had arrived, their armored forms silhouetted in the dim lighting as they advanced, weapons gleaming in the cold light. Elias, Marisol, and T'Kal braced themselves, knowing they were vastly outnumbered. T'Kal turned to Elias, his voice calm despite the imminent threat. "I'll hold them off. You two need to get to the extraction point. There's a ship waiting for you. It's the only chance you have to escape before they close in on every exit." Marisol's eyes widened. "No, T'Kal, you can't stay here. You'll be killed." T'Kal's face softened, a look of resolve crossing his features. "My life is already forfeit in the Council's eyes. But with this message sent, my mission is complete. Now, I need to make sure you live to see the peace you fought for." He pressed a small device into Elias's hand, a hollow emitter with a pre-programmed route leading to the extraction point. "Go," he urged, his eyes fierce. "Make sure the Council pays for what they've done." Reluctantly, Elias nodded, gripping T'Kal's arm in a gesture of respect. "Thank you. You've given us a chance to end this." T'Kal simply nodded, then turned to face the corridor as the footsteps grew louder. With one last look at Marisol and Elias, he stepped into the hall, his silhouette disappearing as he confronted the Xylarian soldiers. Elias and Marisol ran, following the hollow emitter's guidance through a series of twisting passages that led them to a narrow escape tunnel. The sounds of battle echoed behind them, but they pressed on, fueled by T'Kal's sacrifice and the urgency of their mission. At last, they emerged onto a hidden platform where a small, sleek spacecraft awaited. The ship's engines roared to life as they boarded, and within moments, they were soaring away from Siriol, leaving the Xylarian capital and its embattled resistance far behind. As they cleared the planet's atmosphere, Marisol activated the ship's long-range scanner, scanning for any sign of pursuit. A fleet of Xylarian warships hovered in the distance, but they seemed to be in disarray, their attention diverted by the spreading fallout of the transmission. The message had caused an immediate ripple of chaos, with several galactic factions already broadcasting demands for explanations from the Xylarian Council. Elias let out a breath of relief, a weight lifting as he realized they had managed to escape. But his relief was tempered by sorrow. T'Kal's sacrifice hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the cost of their mission and the stakes of the battle that lay ahead. Back on Earth, they were greeted as heroes, the data they'd shared causing a seismic shift in galactic politics. In a special session of the Galactic Council, the Xylarian Empire was forced to stand trial for its actions. The Council, desperate to save face and avoid a full-scale war, began withdrawing forces from contested areas, agreeing to dismantle all active Singularity Protocol projects under the watchful eyes of a coalition of galactic overseers. But for Elias and Marisol, victory was bittersweet. They had achieved their goal, but the scars of their journey remained a reminder of those they had lost along the way and the lengths they'd gone to protect their world. As Earth's representatives, they now stood in the council chambers, champions of peace in a galaxy reshaped by their actions. With T'Kal's sacrifice and the bravery of those who dared to challenge the Xylarian Empire, a new chapter had begun. Yet, As Elias gazed out over the assembled representatives, he knew that vigilance would always be required. The galaxy was vast, and with secrets hidden in every corner, they would have to remain ever watchful to prevent another Singularity Protocol from threatening the fragile peace they had fought so hard to secure.